And with that, it's time for our next presentation on today's Data Protection Megacast. I'm excited to introduce Derek Wood, who's the VP of Product Marketing, and Eric Jordan, who is a Senior Sales Engineer at Infrascale. Derek and Aaron, are you there?
I am here, yes. Derek.
I am here.
Excellent.
Hello.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the event today. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today. Again, my name is Derek Wood. I'm the VP of Product Marketing here at Infrascale. I'm joined by Aaron Jordan, our Senior Sales Engineer. Today, we're just going to walk through briefly an introduction into who Infrascale is, and then Aaron's going to just demo the service and show you how to very quickly and easily cloud boot a machine to our cloud. So our mission is two-part. We build cloud-based services to help customers of any size eradicate downtime and data loss. And now these two problems are often associated with similar events, but they're different problems to solve for. Your backup systems are primarily designed to avoid data loss, whereas a disaster recovery system is designed to avoid or minimize downtime. Having the combination really gives you a full solution, and that's what Infrascale does. The cost of downtime was estimated to be over $700 billion annually in lost productivity. And the reason that number is so large is because downtime is an event that doesn't stop once it's over. It continues to affect your business, the other businesses you interact with, your customers, and the downtime just keeps going on and on. Now, understanding your cost of downtime is the first step in really understanding how important it is for you to address. The other part would be understanding the different causes of downtime. And things like natural disasters, which is usually what comes to mind, but most of it comes with hardware failure, human error, software failure, and of course, malicious software like ransomware, which is becoming its own category unto itself. And you need to have a strategy in place for all these items. And we like to think of ourselves as providing you with a full solution because our software options do give you the ability to address all of these. Differences in types of recovery, differences in types of backup, different RPOs and RTOs. And it really lets you satisfy everything that you need to do to make sure that you have a solid business continuity plan. How we do this is, again, with two parts. We have Infrascale Cloud Backup, which is a software-based backup service you can mass deploy across many endpoints, whether on or off network, and that way you can have data protection no matter what. So you have a lot of remote workers, no problem. You have some smaller offices that are just starting up, no problem. You can protect them with this service. If you have other systems that really don't need to have a tremendously reliable uptime, you just need it to be available, that's where your backup would come in. But then when you switch to your production servers, the things that keep your business running day in and day out, and if they go down, it's going to cause a lot of pain for you and your customers. That's where the Infrascale Disaster Recovery solution comes in. We guarantee a 15-minute failover to our cloud, and no one else in the industry is giving a guarantee like that. As far as what you can do, we also like the fact that our platform is built to cover everything. So you need to back up data from mobile devices, or do you want to recover a file from a mobile device, or just browse your backup from a mobile device just to check it to make sure, before you go to bed or something like that? No problem. Desktops, laptops, Windows, Mac, Linux, all covered. You're running a mixed environment of virtual and physical machines, as many companies do, especially in the early days of migration. You need a solution that's going to cover everything. And with Infrascale, you get that without all the additional licensing that you typically see elsewhere. So you don't need to go to a second vendor. You don't need to worry about all the nickels and dimes that will get at you. We have a very simple solution, all based on how much data you need to protect. We are also an internationally operated company. most of our customers being in the U.S. and in the EU. We were actually founded in Australia, so we have our roots kind of based outside of the States. But we have a global network of data centers we use to protect. So if you need EU GDPR compliance, not a problem. You have some sort of sovereignty restrictions to keep your data within sovereign borders. We're generally going to have a data center already up and available for you. If not, it's a very quick time frame for us to get that set up so that you can continue and start protecting your business. A little bit about Infrascale. We were founded in 2011. We've actually been in cloud backup services since about 2006, and we have a consumer service called SOS Online Backup that really is where our expertise in cloud computing started. We were ranked as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant last year as in the disaster recovery as a service space. And a big reason for that is our DNA as experts in cloud services. A lot of times what we're competing with and what you're competing with in making decisions is you have these older names, there's a lot of hardware involved, the purchasing process is quite complex, and that goes kind of an old model. And then there's a whole other component of cloud aspect. You know, do you want to replicate? Then there's a whole other pricing sheet to it. We were the first to really take DR and move it to the cloud as a primary recovery point. And because of that, we've been able to really differentiate ourselves from the market. And you're already seeing over the last couple of years, many other DR providers that were historically all based around hardware start to come over to the cloud. But because it is our back end that we've built, we have a lot of flexibility that a lot of competitors don't, which is, of course, great for us and especially great for our customers. So that 15-minute failover guarantee, you can't really guarantee that if you don't control the environment you're recovering to, and Infrascale does. And then just a brief on the Gartner ranking. Here's Infrascale on the top right part in the leader quadrant. Now in 2015, we just got an honorable mention as a cool vendor. 2016, we moved up to the visionary area, and then 2017 up to the leader space. So it's very uncommon to see companies make this jump so quickly. But again, the reason is because of our DNA in cloud-based services, specifically in backup and disaster recovery, allowed us to very quickly kind of disrupt the market and change the way that people were operating. And it really started to answer the needs of many of the SMBs and mid-market companies out there that needed a DR service but couldn't afford the price tag of those legacy systems. And with that, I'll hand it over to Aaron to run us through recovery.
Thanks for that, Derek. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just let me know once you can see it. All right, great. So I'm going to start in our Infrascale dashboard. This is going to be where you're going to manage whatever product you happen to be using. But today I'm going to focus on the disaster recovery as a product stuff. So I'm going to run over to the manage side here, and then I'm going to jump down into the appliances. And you'll see the list of all your appliances that you might have deployed. And then you can see how they're doing, what they're doing, stats, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And then I can manage them by jumping over to the primary machine, which is the local on-prem appliance, or the cloud. So I'm just going to actually open up the cloud here and note that you get a secure connection to be able to do whatever you need to do remotely from anywhere in the world. Now, we'll spend some time in the cloud in a moment when I come back and talk about the cloud booting. But for now, I just wanted to jump to a local appliance as well and show you that everything that you do locally, you can do on the cloud and vice versa. So for now, I want to go up to my Clients tab here and talk about a few of Infrascale's main features. One of the biggest features is our global deduplication. So gone are the days of segregating data between machines, right? We want to get as much deduplication as possible in. And so to that end, we're able to look at physical machines, virtual machines, VMware and Hyper-V. It doesn't matter what they are. And we're going to be able to pull out the data regardless of where it comes from. And then from there, we're going to do things like creating global block maps that allows us to replicate only the change blocks to the cloud and recover only change blocks from the cloud. The name of the game here during disaster recovery is speed. We want to make sure that you're up and running and you're able to recover files or whatever you might need to do, like push back machines to your hypervisor host, that we can handle. So as an example, if I go up to my file server here and I right-click and I browse and restore, it's going to populate the list of all my snapshots that I have available. And then I will choose, in incremental is fine, choose contain files or application data. Or I can even look at the component files. In this instance, it's a virtual machine. It's a VMware guest. I could open it up and pull up the VMDK if I wanted to. And I'll go ahead and restore only selected items. And then this will build the structure for the data. And then I can browse through the partitions. And then from there, I can start to say, all right, I'm going to recover these sets of data, these files, these folders, whether I want to click blue links and download individual files, or load up folders and pull down entire directory sets, etc. So from here, I'm able to grab, for example, my users, and then I could say, all right, instead of restoring it back to my VM here, I'll restore it to a different machine altogether. And then I can browse that machine and tell it where it's going to recover to. Now again, in this instance, I actually have the ability to choose individual files and folders, or I can roll back full machines. Whatever I need to do, I just hit restore and I'm good to go. Now this is also really good for ransomware because as you noticed earlier that I isolated for snapshots for points in time. And I'm able to roll back those points in time without having to rebuild the entire folder structure, etc. I just pull back the things that I need and then rebuild the files on the user side. Now moving forward, I actually want to spend some time with our replication. So I talked earlier about replicating data back and forth between the cloud and to the cloud. So that global dedupe that I talked about earlier, how we create those global block maps, and how I said that we only push and pull, change blocks. So just to give you an idea, my last job ran at about 87 megabits per second. And because I was able to pull out the OS data, because I already had a snapshot in the cloud, and maybe some file data from another machine, I was able to increase the effective throughput. So basically, I'm getting about 17 gigabits per second of throughput when I upload to the cloud. Now again, mileage may vary based off of the amount of dedupe that you can pull, but if you have a huge sprawl of VMs where they're all running the same operating system, or multiple file servers, or a lot of file data sprawl, this is really going to come and benefit you, especially if you happen to live in a country where they meter on the data that you upload, right? An unexpected expenditure. We're going to be able to assist you with that by removing the amount of data we actually have to transmit to the cloud to save you some time and money. Now, Derek also mentioned this briefly as well, but I've mentioned that we can replicate anywhere we want. So if I go to my mode, I can choose to replicate to another appliance. So you don't just have to rely on our cloud. You can go to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Services, anything that we could spin up a container in, right? But also, again, let's say you have your own colo. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why not deploy another appliance in that location, virtual or physical, and replicate to that? I've got some MSPs and partners that will decide to deploy virtual machines with multiple, or a hypervisor with multiple virtual machines and become their own cloud for their end users. At the end of the day, it's really up to you. Other things that you can do are actually set the encryption information by expanding the remote appliance information where you can set the encryption keys. Of course, everything's encrypted locally in transit and at rest at 256-bit AES, and then even FIPS 120 if required for like security, like police and medical, etc. So moving over to my boot tab, I actually want to show a machine come online. So to do that, all I have to do is right-click the machine and boot an individual one. Now, I can also boot a group if I wanted to, but for now, I'll just boot this one here. And again, I can choose a snapshot from any point in time. Because of our global dedupe, we're able to instantly hydrate machines. No need to wait for it to spin up. So I'll just choose the resources that will leverage from the on-prem appliance, tell it that I can talk to my live environment. A note here that if I wanted to, I could test all of this in a group and not have my live environment disturbed because I'm isolating it all. And then once I have that set, I'll fire it off, go to my active tab, and then from here we can watch the machine come up. And I don't mean through the preview window. I mean I can open it up and watch the machine come up. So here I'm going to be able to access this machine. As soon as it comes online, I'm going to actually ping Google once it logs in, and I'll make sure that my network is working. Now, Derek mentioned earlier that we guarantee machines in 15 minutes or less. That's to cover ourselves. It clearly doesn't take that long. In fact, these machines are pretty quick. I think the biggest machine I saw, a 10 terabyte file server, and that took about 7.5, 8 minutes to spin up. But that was a single machine and 10 terabytes of data that we had to virtualize. So as you can see, this machine online, running quickly, no fuss, no muss, right? And because we can do things like emulate the MAC address and then thus the IP address of a machine, we actually have the unique ability to have your routing and your networking captured and pre-configured. So you're not wasting your time with that. Now, if I wanted to recover from this instance, all I have to do is power off the machine and convert it to a backup job. So in this instance, I'll just power off this machine, and then it'll take a second to power down. And while it does, if it is a virtual machine, from there I'll just push it right back to the hypervisor. It'll roll back over and rebuild that machine for you. If it's a physical machine, I'd go into my support tab. I'd convert the machine into a job after I would boot into the isolated VM, or the isolated ISO, and this would rebuild the machine from a cold bare metal standpoint, regardless of the hardware that you started with, regardless of the hardware you go to. It's largely automated, so all you have to do is point it at the appliance and tell it which client we're rebuilding. It'll know what the partition looks like. It'll know what the network segmentation should look like, and it'll know what drivers it needs to inject. Now, if there are special drivers that are not readily available on the market, then you'll have the opportunity to manually say, hey, here's some drivers I want you to push in there, right? There are some out there that cost a little bit of money that we can't get because of legal reasons, so you can inject those easily. So once you've got that injected, and it's got the machine rebuilt, I would then power off the machine as before, convert it to a job, go back to my jobs tab, and then just simply as before, mount up the folder structure, push back the change blocks, and then roll that right back over it. Your physical machine is done. And again, with virtual machines, hit restore, push that back over the hypervisor. That's automated. You can go to lunch. It'll take care of itself. Now, what happens if I have a bigger disaster? Maybe it's more than just my 5 critical machines. It's the entire site is rubble. It's down. It's gone. And I need to bring these machines up in a cloud environment. So again, I told you I'd come back to this. So here we are in my cloud environment. And I can, too, upload or boot these machines locally by doing an individual or a group. But I also have full-on orchestration. And the idea behind this is we don't want you to have to scramble when something bad happens. You want to have this pre-configured. You want your LAN set up. You want that IPsec tunnel or the Road Warrior VPN set up. You want those public IPs allocated so that when something happens, beforehand you can just drag and drop and create runbooks, right? Create groups. And so that when something does happen, all you have to do is hit run, and it'll boot the machines top to bottom, left to right, following the scripts and the timers that you set. The LAN will be pre-configured, so you go over to your registrar, point the domain to the new public IP that you were given, and you've got this up and running. Now, while we watch these machines come up, a few things to mention that are really important, that kind of really differentiate us. This is all available right now. You can jump into the cloud. You saw me log in and do this. I didn't need to call in support to ask for assistance. I didn't need to, submit a ticket to get the nod to do this. I can test as often as I want for whatever reason I want, whenever I want. There is no charge to run things on our cloud, so you can test this over the weekend and forget about it and come back 2 weeks later and power it down and no biggie. We don't care. And then also, that goes without saying, if something bad happens and let's say a hurricane, God forbid, hits, and you find yourself in a scenario where you need to be able to roll back, and the last thing on your mind is when I can get back, right? Because you don't want to have to pay for all that additional downtime while you're in the cloud. With Infrascale, that's not a problem. The cost is included, so you just run as long as you need. And the reason we can do that is because we own our clouds, right? We have our own clouds. We've been doing it since, as Derek mentioned, 2006. So we're in a lot of data centers. We've got a lot of inroads, so we can make this real inexpensive to make this viable to everybody. Now, again, I'm just gabbing away, but my machines are coming up top to bottom. I've got my domain controller that came up. It was a VMware guest, followed by my SQL server, again, a VMware guest running 2008 R2. I have my Hyper-V guest running Linux, which is the database on this is MySQL. And then I have my app servers, both physical Windows and physical Linux. Like I said, we're just gabbing away, and it's firing everything up. So if I wanted to recover from the cloud, there's only one additional step. I power off the machine, convert it to a job as before, and I go up to jobs, and I push down the data from the cloud. Now, note real quick that I have a job. This one right here, it's actually got an error right here because it didn't pass the verification because it's actually pushing the data. And this is just to show you that it does verify the data every point in time of the way. Even if it is bootable, it will let you know, hey, there's something that I didn't like. I had something that I didn't know about, so I'm going to re-verify. So with that being said, eventually this will re-verify, but now if I wanted to, I can boot this up. But just to kind of exemplify how fast we can get data back and forth to the cloud, this is that same that job that I converted earlier on the local machine. 1056 Pacific Standard, 1056 Pacific Standard. We knew that it was only 11 files, so we rebuilt it. The effective throughput was 2.14 gigabytes per second, not gigabits. And so once it verifies again, we'll know that this is all up there, but it basically chucked everything up there quickly. And then again, recovering is the same idea. I push back to primary. It's going to instantly pull everything back down. And this way you can do the recovery from the local site, which is also important. Let's say that the local site, the appliance itself is gone along with your local site. We will precede the cloud data onto the new local appliance and ship your brand new box as part of the service, no extra cost. And that's because, as Derek mentioned earlier, it's all about the protected storage. We talked to you about protected storage and all the features, the update, the hardware maintenance, the warranty, replacements. The service itself is all included. All you have to do is tell us what you need and we'll take care of it for you. This, of course, includes the implementation services to get this running. We don't expect you to go this alone. We'll help you set this up with a dedicated rep who will sit down with you, discuss your backup scenario, discuss what your RTOs and RPOs are, make sure it fits. Then from there, you want to go ahead and make sure that you're not going to have to go this alone when it comes to recovery because you've got that 24/7 stateside report, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with that being said, I have covered everything that I wanted to cover on this demo, so I want to open this up for questions and then allow for anyone else that needs to step in to be able to go from here. So I appreciate your time, and I'll just stand by for any Q&A.
Yeah, great presentation. I love seeing the live demo of a live recovery. Very cool stuff. While we do the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and pop up this poll question. The poll question on the screen right now is, would you like to learn more about disaster recovery as a service from Infrascale? If so, select one of the options there on the screen. And let's see, first question here is about your data centers. Where are your data centers located?
Oh, goodness. We have a lot of them. I think there's like 7 in the States and there's like 16 globally. So from East Coast, West Coast, LA, 3 in Texas, 2 in Arizona, 1 in Kentucky, 1 in Georgia. And again, there's a few others, or I might miscount, but there's a bunch of them there. I try to keep track of this fast expanding. Along with Canada, that's in Toronto. We have 1 in South Africa, Johannesburg. We have 1 in the United Kingdom in Maidenhead. We have 1 in Germany. We have 1 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We have 1 in Australia. I think 1 in Melbourne and 1 in Sydney now. And then, of course, don't just rely on our data centers, right? We can go to Google Cloud Services. You can also use your own infrastructure.
Cool, cool. Next question is compliance. Do you support HIPAA compliance?
Yeah, actually, that one was pretty simple to get. It's just a matter of making sure that the owners of the data are tracked and there are certain security settings in place to ensure there's encryption and a lack of access or visibility from anyone other than the intended recipient, so just the doctors and the patients and the IT who've signed off on it. I think more importantly, we're one of the few cloud providers in the world that have CGIS compliant data center, which is we can hold government data, not just police and medical, but the classified documentation as well. So we have some government employees that have specific restrictions and requirements on it. That one was difficult to get.
Wow, cool. Another question here is about the appliance or the hardware that's required. Do they have to purchase the hardware from Infrascale, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we can get more details if we talk to a sales rep and we can get you introduced, but for now, it's per protected storage. So you tell us, this is how much storage I have, and then we have a sizing doc that determines what your growth looks like, and then we'll build you a box. And all you ever pay for, regardless of the size of the resources in the box, is how much total storage you are protecting. and that's all you pay for. The hardware is included as part of the service.
Okay, awesome. And then another question here they're asking about, you talked about failover. What about failback?
Sure. So failback, as I had showed previously, what you would end up doing if it's a physical machine, we start with the recovery environment ISO that boots into new hardware that will build the baseline, and then from the appliance itself, the local appliance, you would feed back the data into the new physical machine. If it's a virtual machine, you would point it to your respective hypervisor, VMware Hyper-V, and then just push that right on back to the respective hypervisor, and it would push back the change blocks or the new physical or new virtual machine if you have to rebuild it on the new vCenter or what have you, or Hyper-V Storage Manager.
Okay. And then last question we probably have time for here. This person's asking about a POC, a proof of concept. How does that usually work with Infrascale? Who do they contact? How does it get kicked off?
Sure. So it's initiated by the sales rep. So you'll want to contact our sales team, and then what will happen is we'll set up a call where we'll discuss what your needs are. I'll give you a demo far more in depth than what you saw here. And then what we'll do is we'll discuss the needs. Do you have a need immediately to test this out? Do you want to go ahead and, or what are the requirements of your POC you require? So what do you want to do? We have a document that will outline the requirements for your testing to make sure it's successful, and then you're assigned a dedicated resource to run through that with you, so that your POC can be covering all the bases that you need to cover, not just the basic, does it work with SQL, does it do backups, does it fail over, et cetera. We can say, oh, do you have an Oracle instance? Let's test it with Oracle. So definitely yes, probably a bigger answer than you wanted, but yes, contact sales.
All right. Well, great presentation, Aaron. Thanks so much for the live demo. Really cool stuff. And thank you, Derek, as well. Thanks, Infrascale, for being on the event today.